Too much. Cool. So we are now live on YouTube and Facebook group and also my personal profile. And today I'm joined by one of my clients, Liam Price.
Hello.
Liam, say hey.
Hi, hey guys. Hello.
What's going on?
Yeah, not much today so far.
Cool, man. So Liam's just jumping on and joining us to basically share his story and journey going from being an English teacher in China, if I remember right.
Yeah, I was an English teacher first, and then I was a music teacher eventually.
Cool. So we're going to talk all about Liam's journey from going from teaching English and music and to basically building his own digital advertising consultancy, working with music schools, to exploding to an exploding business that's literally just brought him in. What did you hit last month?
This month, just since yesterday, it was $15,800.
Nice, cool. So everybody who's watching live, you'll know that the date is the 1st of December. So Liam's literally just come out of the other side of his record month of a 15K month. Man, you've got such a cool story. And I'm really, really going to enjoy this. So first of all, thank you for just taking a little bit of time out to, share your journey, your experience, your story. Been a pretty crazy one. And what my job here is to basically extract maximum value out of your lessons for the people who are going to be watching. Your lessons, your trials, your tribulations. So before we kind of dive into all of that like juicy stuff, first of all, if everybody's watching, hey, make sure you drop us a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. If you're watching over on YouTube, drop us a comment below, etc., etc. Feel free to drop any questions that you have as well throughout. If they're relevant, I will bring them up at some point. Now, Liam, just give us a little bit of a roundup, a kind of backstory on yourself. Obviously, before you came across me and started working with me, like what were you doing?
Yeah, so I was a teacher in China, and I've been a teacher in China for about 8 years, since 2012. I first went over there just as I graduated university, got into teaching English, and eventually sort of segued into teaching music in my last 3 years while I was there in a high school, which I really enjoyed, over that time. But my wife and I were talking about like we needed a way to, get, our lives together in Europe, because we didn't really want to be living in China forever. So, yeah, it was a long time we were there, though, it felt like.
So you've just mentioned music, and I think this is obviously a very relevant thing, because this is obviously what you've positioned your business and built your business around as well, your ad agency and your ad consultancy. So why music? Like, is music a big part of your life, or like, when you're music teacher, why?
Yeah, my major in university is music, and it was like kind of everything I did in school. I was just like obsessed with the guitar and stuff. So it was like a natural idea to work with musicians with this agency, with marketing music schools, because obviously I've got that knowledge, and I'd actually been a music teacher. So, it was pretty easy to understand the whole industry, in terms of like what they're actually having difficulties with. Although mine was slightly different. I was like a high school music teacher, and I'm kind of now working with private schools and private music teachers. So it's a little bit different, but the general difficulties of the job are the same, I would say.
Yeah. So do you feel like choosing to work with who you were passionate about, right? You're kind of, your alignment is what I kind of refer to it. Anybody who listens and follows me on YouTube or anywhere like that. What impact do you think having alignment with the types of businesses that you're serving now, what impact do you think that has had on obviously your success? How important has that been?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, because I was working with mortgage brokers originally, and it was just a complete misalignment, and I was having a real tough time with like cracking that nut. And I was getting advice to sort of stick with that niche, like, hey, you can't run from your problems. And I was like, I've got this feeling like maybe there's someone that I can better understand. So yeah, it was amazing to find like people that I can just speak to. And, when I'm actually talking with them, when I first meet them or afterwards, it's quite easy to sort of chat about stuff that's sort of off topic, like that's just like music related or something like that, which is, great for building a connection and a rapport with the people that I'm working with. So yeah, it definitely makes things much more enjoyable having an understanding of the people I'm working with.
Yeah, for sure. How long have we actually been working together now? Can you remember when you first joined TLM?
Yeah, man, it was just like October last year. So I think
about a year, just over a year, right?
Yeah, I got my first client like 35 days later. So you could say it's about 12 months from
let's start with then. I thought it was longer. So like in the email that I put out and the post I put out, I actually said 18 months. I thought it was about 18 months. So even cooler. So about 30 months then. Let's go back 30 months ago. You mentioned your wife, you mentioned you were teaching in China. Where did that kind of burning feeling come from that you needed or you wanted to do something different? Like, just tell us a little bit about that before you actually got started and decided to start your own digital ad agency.
Yeah, I can't pinpoint the exact moment, but there was a time just before that, like 6 months before I joined the TLM, where I got passed up for a promotion in my high school. And I was just so annoyed by it. It's like, I've worked there for 3 years and they put me on a starting salary, and I've taken all these professional trainings on the weekends and stuff like this. And then I come to renegotiate my contract and they give me like a £40 increase. That's like, well, this sucks, man. So I don't know what happened, but I was just like, I need to find a way to make a side income or something like that's going to help me in the UK. Because my plan then, or our plan with my wife, was like, I'll take a PGCE qualification in the UK to train as a real teacher, like a qualified teacher, to then get a job in the UK, which would be a massive pay cut as well. Yeah. And I was like, I just need something on the side, maybe that, because I was doing a lot of part-time work as well, and I was like, that's the key. I just need more income. Like I was working evenings or weekends, sometimes doing private English teaching. I was like, so I was sort of putting something together. It's like, there's something about money. Definitely need more money to make life in Europe easier or better, something. And I went through a series of like, maybe I can start a blog. And so I wrote a massive, like, 90,000 word blog that never got launched, and a book. I wrote a book as well, and I was like, maybe I can become the world's next James Joyce. Turns out it's hard to do that. And then I I just started seeing your ads for like 3 months, and I was like, this is really too specific. It was like uncannily weird, and I didn't like it. It was like, this guy's cracked the code for living abroad and as an expat. I was like, that seems weird. That's like exactly me. And so it took me quite a while to click on that ad. And eventually I thought, well, what the hell harm does it do to click on it? So I clicked on it and liked what I saw. So I don't really know like where I went from I need a side income to I need to replace my full-time income. But I think it was something. It's obviously a natural progression, a natural understanding. Like, well, why am I trying to make it side? Why don't I just replace it? It's like a natural step, I guess, to think about. So yeah,
that probably often comes from people maybe not expecting themselves to see the kind of success that you can like see, and in the kind of realistic time frames as well. Like when you first get started running your own business in anything, there's always that like voice in the back of your mind that's like, yeah, but will it work for me? Will this work? Does it actually work? Blah, blah, blah. And that's a voice I think that nearly everybody has. So it's probably quite normal to come into it looking for a side gig, looking for a side income, to then pretty quickly, if you're lucky, and if, you come up against the the opportunity to actually go full time pretty quickly and replace your income fully, then that's really great. So obviously that's the kind of evolution that you've probably gone through at that time as well. So when you first got started, then what was your previous experience or knowledge on marketing, digital advertising, sales, whatever it happens to be?
Well, I had no experience at all. Although every time I met a customer, when I was teaching in my English schools, every time I met like a business owner, like a Chinese business owner who had like a what's it called, like a Valentino watch on, it was always impressive to me. And he was like, "Yes, I'm a businessman." And I'd be thinking, "Oh, that sounds cool," but never really knowing what that really meant at all, or how one becomes a businessman. Yeah, just like it's some kind of other world that other people do. So I had no experience of it at all. Definitely
Amazing. So let's talk about your you climb up the mountain, right? So you got started about 13 months ago, just over a year ago. No experience in anything digital advertising, marketing, sales, any of that stuff. So what's the journey been like? So when you first got started out, you obviously said you've obviously had trials, tribulations, failures. Take me through it. Let's just have an overview of the last 13 months, just over a year, of your story from 0 to 15K a month.
Yeah, so the first the first month or so was like training and putting into practice, like, I'm going to get my first client, and it was quite exciting. And you're doing all the action steps, and you're just kind of like really focused when you're doing that. And then when I actually got my first client, I had a bit of a setback immediately, because it was around the time of the Australian fires last year. And I picked up an Australian client who was a mortgage broker, which is a bad fit, as I said. And he just dropped off the face of the planet. He was like, "Oh, I've got some family stuff to be dealing with now." And I was like, I'm just stuck then. So I was trying to hard sell, because, I was like, well, I've got my FPT. So I was trying to just hard sell after that every other call I had. And so obviously I didn't have any testimonial.
Do you mean straight sell?
Yeah, straight sell. I was trying to straight sell, rather.
You were trying to basically sell your service without doing what we call a final product test, which is where you work with somebody for free for everybody else's benefit to gain that experience and gain that credibility before you actually start selling your service to businesses. So you went straight in to try and straight sell your own service.
Right. Because I had that guy, I had agreed to be the free tester. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I've got this guy. And so, for the next 6 weeks, I was waiting on this guy, meanwhile trying to straight sell everybody else and getting kind of nowhere. And then eventually he just said, "Look, let's put this off." And I was like, well, damn, man. So it'd been like 3 months at that point, or something like that, 2.5, 3 months or something. It's getting close to Christmas. And I was thinking like, oh, that was difficult. That set me back. So I think it was like on the day or something that he told me he wanted to, take a step back, I managed to get a straight sell, which was just like, I don't know, luck, I guess.
What price point did you sell your service at to your first client?
First client, it was just maybe expenses, but the second sell, the straight sell, was like $779, which is got a funny story as well. I'll get into that. Yeah, £7,000.
$1,000 roughly, right?
Yes. And so with him though, it was like, okay, awesome. We got the first real client, except I'm trying to sort of bluff in a way that I've done this before, or feel like I'm more knowledgeable than I actually am. And we did all the prep work, but I eventually ended up getting his I ended up getting his LinkedIn account banned or restricted by my era.
Wasn't an ideal start with that first client then.
No. I was thinking like, oh God, is this for me? Is this really like
great example and demonstration of like the people's expectations when they're starting a business is like everything will go right and everything that I do will work. And then, but the actual reality of it is like, you know, every day you face a new challenge, right? You're learning a new skill. You don't know everything that you kind of need to know, right? When you're first getting started out, hence the final product test and working with somebody for free to begin with, to gain that experience. So you obviously had your fair share of like challenges and trials to begin with. So what would you say to somebody who's at that point now, who's experiencing these challenges, who's like, oh my God, you know, this is tough, this is really hard, like I just want to give up? Like, what would you say to somebody who's at that point now? Because everybody experiences that at some point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could have given up at that point, and then where would I be? I would have renewed my contract with my high school, which I hated, and I was commuting, you know, an hour into school and or doing all this kind of stuff that I didn't like, and I would have to be living in a place where I didn't like, and I would have to, you know, my wife would be having to live in especially a place that she didn't like, away from her family particularly, and there was just really no option to give up. I would just felt too much of a fool to be like, you know, because you tell all your family about it as well, like, oh, I'm starting a business, and they're like, yeah, okay. And it would just be terrible to just come back with your tail between your legs and say like, well, I gave up after I had my first couple mistakes. So, you know, those mistakes in the grand scheme of things are really, really not that big of a deal. What happened is I just refunded the guy. And I did actually get his account unbanned. It was just a temporary restriction. And we just, you know, parted ways and we never spoke again. It didn't ruin my entire career or anything. He didn't badmouth me all over the internet. Yeah, it would, like, you just get over the small mistakes and you kind of expect them because, you know, you keep doing those. Because I would never make that mistake again. You know, there's no way I can make that. I don't work with LinkedIn anymore, but I could do that.
What's amazing, I think needs highlighting, is like when these things happen, and they've happened to me, they happen to Liam, they happen to everybody who's like, you know, at the top of the game ultimately, like things go wrong, right? And at the time it feels like this is the worst thing ever. My whole business is going to come crashing down before it's even started. Oh my God, you know, I've got to give up or stop or whatever. But now you are where you are at the end of really your first year in business, sitting here making 15K, you know, hitting 15K months. How small do those problems now feel? Like, if you look back and you think, imagine if I'd have given up because of that.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't now be, you know, where you are now. But you just kind of said it yourself, like these things feel small now. But at the time, and this is just inspiration and motivation for anybody who's experiencing these kind of things in their business or whenever you do, because you will at some point. At the time, it feels like this is the biggest thing that could possibly ever go wrong and everything's a disaster. But actually, you know, when you have moved past that and you look back at all the other challenges that you've now faced as well, each challenge seems to get smaller and smaller, though at the time it feels like the biggest obstacle in the world, right?
That's really true.
How did you keep moving forward then?
Say again?
How did you keep moving forward? So you had a pretty big reason not to throw in the towel after a couple of early mistakes, right, in your first month or so. So then what happened after that?
I think it was my wife that kind of kept me going. Like, you know, after a week, she was like, "You're gonna really give up after that? Come on, don't be a baby." Like, fine. I guess I won't be a baby. But yeah, like you're absolutely right. Like the problems seem to get smaller, and like just to highlight that, go back to that, what I said about I quoted £779 to him. I actually forgot the price I had said to him, and then I misquoted it in the email follow-up to him, and he was like, "Oh, that's cheaper than what you said before." And I was like, oh God. So he's just making mistakes all over the place. And I'm still doing it now, where, you know, I very recently hired someone to help me. And we came up with a ton of mistakes in the first month. And I'm just like, oh yeah, sorry about that. I didn't know about that. You know, there's just tons of stuff that comes up all the time, but you just kind of laugh it off now and go forward and fix it. But going forward, yeah, I don't really know what. I mean, I guess I just don't like to quit things. You know, it just made sense to me. It was a proven concept, so I'd had 2 customers, but I did quit the mortgage brokers. So yeah. I started.
So then you steered towards what you actually align with and you know, arguably what you kind of put on this earth to do right now. So let's talk a little bit about that then. You then got into working with music schools, right? Something that you're aligned with, something that you actually evidently enjoy doing. Where did we go from there? What happened?
Yeah, it kind of just blew up. I mean, there was COVID happened just at that point where in China in particular, we were on for Chinese New Year. We were off for Chinese New Year, and we were looking like we weren't going home to China, or we could sort of just stay out China for as long as we wanted with our current school, you know, contract. We were going to teach online. And so I took a risk and I was like, hey, let's just go to Lithuania, which is where my wife's from. So we managed to transition to, you know, living where we actually wanted within like 4 months of starting the Lifestyle Marketeer, which was really cool because we had like a backup plan now. You know, it's like, okay, well, if my school fires me, I can keep doing this, you know. So that was quite cool. I didn't have to go through this convoluted thing of like getting a teaching degree and then, you know, getting some experience in the UK and all that stuff. But what happened when I got to Lithuania was, you know, one thing that I felt was a little bit difficult was time zones, and the Chinese firewall in China was holding me back on things like Skype. Sometimes it would just cut out, Zoom just cut out occasionally, and I'd have to be recalling these people for calls. But in Lithuania, it was just suddenly really easy because I was able to talk to people throughout the day rather than at night. And I'd been through that trial by fire for 4 months period where I'd just been making every mistake I could. And it was suddenly like, hey, it's really easy to talk to music teachers because they're not business people. They're not mortgage brokers who are looking to, like, you know, I don't know, they're just so stern. But music teachers are so casual. It was just like, this is way easier. So I picked up something like 7 or 8 clients within about like 2 months period. And that really took off. And I was like, hold on, this is a real thing now. This is cool. You know, that was really fast. So yeah.
It was at that point that I think you did a success story interview pre-recorded with Anthony, I believe, at that time.
Yes,
right.
That's right.
So
yeah.
you started to see this, you know, real substantial success. What was that? Maybe 6 months after you enrolled, like originally? Yeah,
something like that. So 5 or 6 months or something like that, and I'd managed to just equal my school salary, which was really cool. It was like the first month that I'd gone like, wow, my side income is now equal to my real income. That was cool.
So over the last kind of 6 months or so then, at that point, if I remember just roughly from your last success story, you were sitting at about 5K a month, roughly, right? 4 or 5K a month?
Yes, yeah. Something like that. Yeah, about 4.
So at that time, you obviously then decided that you wanted to work with me in a more closer one-to-one role and environment, right? So what was the motivation for that? Why did you want to jump into my one-to-one mentorship program?
Well, I don't know how honest I can be here, but I obviously saw that like I was getting too many clients to handle. And I was like, well, hold on, there's a cap for me here that I can handle. You know, and I was thinking like, well, I'm sort of fulfilling orders of my service, and then I'm missing out time on getting new orders. And then, so I'm doing this kind of dance of, you know, trying to keep up with things. And there's a couple of ways you could do that, which I wasn't aware of at the time, which is like, well, maybe I could, you know, hire some help or something. And that seemed really intimidating. And so I obviously am aware that it's like, well, surely not everybody is working like this. Surely James isn't working like this. So I thought maybe I'll just, you know, work with him and see what more he can tell me. What's like, okay, I'm at this point. Where do I go from here? Because you've obviously been here before. You must have been. And, you know, you're managing far more clients than I am. How does it work? You know, and that was obviously the step. It was so fast though. It was like, you know, like, yes, I'd been in the TLM for like 6 months, but it was only 2 months into actually having clients. I was like, I need the next step. It's like really
evolution. So the evolution for you came, and for most people, especially anybody who you know is aware and familiar with me and the one-to-one group as well, the evolution is then to evolve into more of a consultative type role, so you can work with more clients without the kind of complexity of hiring lots of different service related staff to fulfill your service, right? So at that point, 6 or 7 months ago, you came to me and you wanted to learn how to kind of evolve into more of a consultant rather than a do it for you service provider to your music school clients, right? So what's that been like over the last 6 months or so of evolving your offer? I mean, you still have what we call done for you clients, right? You're still working with music schools, running their ads as you were originally, but you've now also got this new type of client that we call terminology done with you clients, where you're actually consulting them and coaching them on how to run their own advertising campaigns, how to attract clients into their own business. So what's that transition to a more scalable business model for you, leveraging experience and knowledge that you've got of getting those people results? What's that transition been like in your own business over the last few months?
Well, it's been, at first I didn't even know what that one-on-one work was going to be with you. I didn't fully understand what we were going to even be doing. But now that I see it, it's essentially like a teaching role, which obviously I've been doing for like 8 years anyway. And so when I teach a class of like 30 musicians how to, I give them my music knowledge, it's kind of the same idea, the same principle. So it's kind of like that, right? Like you got groups, you got a group class, you can deal with more people at once, and so that means you can take on more clients in one sort of month. Like you don't really need to worry about like, am I going to have time to actually handle this? Am I going to get overwhelmed with all the stuff that I need to do? Because when you do some work for a client, you manually have to do everything. When you do something with a client, you sort of tell them what to do, they go off and do it, and then if they have any issues, they can kind of ask you, but it's, they ask you less frequently, or it's less time intensive than a do it for you client. So yeah, it works really, really well. And I'm thinking ultimately it would be nice to sort of have both somehow, but I'm focusing on the do it with you at the moment because they're obviously it's easier to handle in a lot of ways, but I also think that they get more from it, like way more from it, because I can give them absolutely everything I know, all my best tricks and tips, whereas when it's do it for you, there's a limited amount of time I even want to spend on their campaigns and things.
Yeah, let's talk about, man, these are great. This is such a great interview, by the way. Thanks so much for sharing all of this. There's comments and stuff coming in as well. So let's talk about the last month or so, because obviously the last month has I want to talk a little bit about your personal transformation. So if you look back a year ago where you were, and now now you're sitting where you are, knowing what you know, have achieved what you've achieved so far, how does it feel? What's the difference between your life then and your life now?
It's a difficult question. I think it's something about, I'm feeling more in control. Like back then, a year ago, I was like running around like a headless chicken, I would say, for stuff. So I was like, I'll learn Mandarin Chinese, I'll learn Lithuanian, I'll learn the piano, I'll go to the gym, I'm listening to all these podcasts. But to what end was the point in all of that? Because ultimately my destiny and the path I got, I could take was limited so much, even despite all the cool stuff I was learning and trying to do. It didn't really amount to anything in a way that I could actually shape or control my future. And so now that I've got, this valued skill set that I've learned from, the Lifestyle Marketeer and the rest of the team, you're much more in control of where you're going. And you can still have time for all the other stuff that you were doing, obviously, but you just feel so much more at ease with everything, I guess, because you don't need to be dependent on someone else sort of giving you, a bone or something.
Liam's, if you haven't noticed, Liam's literally like the most modest person you will ever meet. And take that as a compliment, by the way. I want to know about like the financial side, because this is a big one. This is why people want to start a business. They want to have the financial flexibility, freedom to do what they want, when they want, go where they want, etc. What's that income doing for you in your life? Like, have you thought now about, you've got this cash flow, you've got a couple of employees, right? So you've even, I've helped you with that and coached you on that, starting to build out your own team. But what is having this kind of cash flow, doing? Have you thought about the future? Have you thought about what that's going to enable you to do? Not just the cash flow, but the freedom to actually enjoy your life. Like, where are you heading?
Yeah, I have thought. I mean, just yesterday I was looking at houses, which is nice. It's pretty cool. I probably wasn't thinking about that last year particularly. So yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about things like, hey, well, maybe in 6 months' time I can buy a house in Vilnius. So where was that on the cards? A year ago, it wasn't. It was like, I'll get a job in England and teach in a high school I hate, where all the kids torture me, and I get paid 20 grand a year, and I want to quit, and I'm under pressure from the head teacher and all this stuff. And now it's like, yeah, maybe I'll just buy a house in my wife's hometown in 6 months. That's pretty nice, having that sort of and they creep up on you, these thoughts, because it's like the new normal. And I'm not particularly lavish in my lifestyle. Like the money for me is more like it's like a measure of competition or something. Like, I do like being competitive in a way that's like friendly competitive. Like, I actually find it a little bit crass talking about it in some way, but I
totally understand. I totally agree with you as well. I literally just took a sip out of this plastic cup and thought, this probably doesn't look very like the kind of numbers that we're talking about when we talk about with you. It kind of doesn't align with, then why would you have a plastic cup on the side? But I'm exactly the same. The numbers are essentially a measurement of how well something is performing ultimately. Yeah. So I completely agree with you on that. Now, let's just touch on kind of very briefly before we wrap up. It's been 30 minutes or so. You've dropped some real gold here. What would you say to yourself now, going back 13 months before you actually even started, clicking on my ads, engaging with me and my content, and really trying to decide whether TLM or working with me is actually something that you should do and something that's going to benefit you? What would you say to anybody who is still at that point where they're like, don't know whether I should actually start my own ad agency, don't know whether this guy and this community and these people are actually going to be able to help me? What would you say to those people who are still stuck in that almost like fear frozenness, not being able to move forward and not being able to build something like you've built? What would you say to those people now you are where you are?
So there's a few things that you might think about, which is, one is like, what will happen if you continue sort of living in the way you're living? So for me, it was like unacceptable. I couldn't live in China forever. And also I wasn't particularly happy with having a boss. And I was, there's other things that really bugged me, like the commute, the hours, 11, 12-hour days because of the commute, and waking up. I included the waking up at a time that I couldn't choose. So there's like, what happens if you keep just doing this over and over again? At least it's a bit like in the Matrix when Trinity says, Neo, you know what leads down that road. And so I knew what led down that road. It's like kind of safe. It's kind of okay. But knowing as well what I do know about the lifestyle marketeer being so idiot proof that it just like, as long as you don't get upset by the fallbacks that are going to happen, then, you just persevere with it. And it, whether it takes, 2 months or 12 or 2 years or whatever, it works. It will work eventually. And obviously it's always being updated as well. So it's always current, which is great. And the other thing is like, what's the worst that can possibly happen? So for me, it was like, I've always had this attitude with money, like it always comes back, because I was always being employed. And so it's like, well, I'll just wait till the end of the month and I get paid again. So to buy a training product to help me with something that because you never know unless you try something. It's like, well, I can either live with no knowledge of where it could lead, which would suck. It's like, let's go for 80 years and just be like, great, well, I was a teacher for ages, which is fine, and a lot of people do that, but I wonder what could have been. I wouldn't like that thought. And so, paying out, money for a course to teach me something new, it's not crazy. That's a pretty normal thing to be doing. You do that in university, and you do that with my music lessons, my Chinese classes, and all this kind of stuff. It's just when it's business, it just suddenly seems a bit weirder for some reason. But I just thought I can't take not knowing. It's a bit like not knowing what's at the end of the movie. Imagine not reading the last Harry Potter book or something. It'd be weird.
Yeah, totally. Makes total sense. Now, I want to share a quick lesson with everybody before I kind of wrap up this interview. Liam, this has just been great. I want to share a quick lesson from coaching Liam on why Liam's very, very different, why Liam's been able to, achieve what he has in 12 months. I want to share my lesson. So I don't know whether you're going to want to hear this, Liam, but Liam is one of those people who's great to coach. He asks an unhumanly amount of questions, and I would go as far to say as that's probably one of the key characteristics as to why you've got to where you have so quickly in a year. I mean, I might be wrong, and I haven't checked our records, but I'm pretty sure that in 12 or 13 months, having a 15K month has to be one of the fastest, largest achievements by anybody in TLM. So hat off to you for that.
Thanks.
I think that comes down to, just for everybody else who's watching this thinking, I want to be where Liam's sitting, ask every single question that comes into your head, because that's a little bit exaggerated, but my point is Liam asks a lot of questions. He asks a lot of great questions, and I hope he gets a lot of great answers. But he's very inquisitive, and he's always asking how he could be better, how he could improve this, how he could improve that, what could be better about certain things that he's doing. And I think his continuous quest to better himself professionally and personally has to be one of the things that's contributed towards his success in the time frame that he's achieved. So Liam is a great guy. I love working with him. And I just wanted to, give that advice to anybody who's watching, thinking, how can I get to Liam's position faster and more efficiently? It simply comes down to asking questions and seeking, improvement each day, or, as often as you can. Would you agree with that, Liam?
Yeah, I think it's been, a great help having the team where you can just ask anything that's holding you back. I made some mistakes at the beginning where I wasn't asking questions, and as soon as I asked that question, and that's my wife's doing as well. She's like, "Why are you so embarrassed to ask this? Just post it in the group, ask." And then I do ask, and it gets the answer like 5 minutes later. It's like, okay, maybe this is very, a good idea to ask questions.
Exactly. Just ask questions. You ask questions, you get answers, you move forward. That's what it's all about, man. You ask great questions as well. So hats off to you for that. Hats off to you for your latest 15K a month achievement. Huge. So proud of you. And thank you very much for taking the time to actually share your experience and being brutally honest about it as well. Because, I'm sure there's people that those challenges and hiccups in their business and in their journey that needed to hear that. We've all been there. Yep. Some of us are there currently, some of us have been there before, but in building your business, that's what it's about. It's about overcoming challenges. Liam, you're a great challenge solver, and you're a great guy. So thank you very much for taking the time. Any final words to anybody who's watching?
No, I've got nothing on the top of my head. Just thanks for all the coaching as well, and thanks for having me on here.
Cool, man. Great stuff. Peace out, Liam. Have a wicked day. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'll see you soon.
Cheers, James.